Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
Yes, welcome back, guys. Just making sure everything's okay there.
Yep.
As usual. So, before we go into this headline, I just wanted to recap a few things. Again, it's good to get an understanding of how things have worked throughout history. Timelines have been changed by just apparent accidents at times. And, as we see this headline, NATO rejecting Russian demand to break Ukraine membership promise. So going back to 2008, there was a promise given to the Ukraine that the country would one day become a member of the Western military alliance known as NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And so this statement does not do anything to ease all the tensions that we have in this world. But you got to remember, too, this world is all about, well, it's all about propaganda when you get down to it. And when we look back in time and we see the propaganda that was out there during World War II, we might view it as almost comical when we look at some of the posters that were put out there. And even on all sides, too, not just by the NAZI apostrophe S's, also on this side, the Allied side, as well as the Axis. Just amazing to look back and think, how could people not see what was really going on there? Of course, they were caught in it emotionally. If you get caught into something emotionally, then it can cloud your judgment. It can get you to overlook all things from an objective standpoint, standing back and just weighing things out and looking at things logically, as well as feeling with your heart, what feels right. When we look at history, it's full of all sorts of unusual events that, we might look at and say, wow, that was really coincidental, or wow, wasn't that strange that happened just at that time? Now, we could look at it a little more cynically and say, yeah, sure, I don't buy it.
No, I don't either. Keep in mind that they understand human emotions. They know how to get people sucked in. They know how to get people to drive the bus in a specific way that benefits them. They use our emotions. So just knowing that, it might help some people be able to stand back and check their emotions before they get sucked into something.
So you see this, the Lusitania, famous ship that was sunk. And this is, of course, going back to the time of World War I. And when we look at it, as it says here, the sinking of Lusitania was one of the most deadly maritime disasters in history, played a major role in changing public opinion during the First World War, because most Americans did not want to get involved. Most people in the US of A said, hey, we don't want to go over there and, send our, brothers, fathers, sons over and, have them killed, put them in harm's way. Well, on that day there, on the 7th of May, 1915, this ship was sunk by a German U-boat off the coast of Ireland, more than half the passengers and crew being killed. Some of those lost were American, and the sickening hardened opinion in the U.S. against Germany, and it kind of was one of the turning points that ended up, sending the U.S. off to start fighting in this global conflagration, which again was perhaps predicted by a 33rd degree Mason way back in 1871, that this was going to happen. Not necessarily the sinking of this ship, but if you look at it, there is a certain group, there is a certain project for a new American century that we could jump forward to 1997, put a report out and said that if the U.S. was going to be the dominant world power, it was going to have to control 7 countries. And interestingly enough, those countries, have become very well known. And then we have General Wesley Clark, that made a statement after, 9/11/01 happened, that infamous event as well, and said he was briefed on the fact that we were going to go into these 7 countries in like 5 years' time. So, we could see that history often really is structured and organized in a way to kind of play out along a certain timeline. This ship was one of the fastest ones of her day. It was a commercial passenger ship, which was thought to be off limits. They wouldn't do this. Now, in reality, the Germans warned about this. They actually warned, and the warnings were ignored. And was that just poor judgment? Or was there something else going on? The German embassy in New York posted a warning before she crossed. They posted a warning in 50 American newspapers reminding the public that the waters around Great Britain were including in the war zone between Britain and Germany, and that ships in those waters could be attacked or sunk, and still it went and was sunk. If we look to, we had talked about that infamous day, which led, the day of Pearl Harbor, which led to World War II, U.S. being pulled in. There's a lot of documentation which shows that they were well aware that that was going to happen, but perhaps they let it happen because it was, again, something that was planned. There was 1,193 fatalities. Talk to me about the numbers, guys, right?
Oh, that's just so unfortunate. All those families, all those individual people, they're somebody's mother, somebody's brother, somebody's son. It's just awful what they do to traumatize the human race. And they just keep going on and on and on. And that's why we're here. We're here to try to bring light to that so it stops happening. So people stop falling into line with the norm and, continuing on with their agenda.
1,900 people had boarded in New York, 1,193 fatalities. The ship sunk in extremely speedy time, 18 minutes.
Wow.
1.8 equals 1 plus 8 is 9 again. And it sank a mere 11.5 miles off the old head of Kinsale. Hypothermia as well. 289 bodies were recovered. Interesting, all the numerology. So why bring this up? Just simply because what the guides have said is that part of what's happening now is the placing into effect the conditions that could lead to something that would cause this type of thing to happen again.
Right.
Basically history repeats itself if we don't aren't aware of everything going on. History can repeat itself. So here you have NATO rejecting the Russian demand, basically saying, well, Ukraine can be part of NATO at some time. And of course, Russia said that's their line that you better not cross. Mm-hmm. Just like that. And here you have Russia has blocked about up to 70% of the Sea of Azov. So says the Ukrainian Navy. So, again, anything could happen at any time out there.
I know they got everything set up just so. And I bet you when you look at the astrology aspect of things, it's also teetering too to make sure things have a little momentum.
Absolutely. So, very, very tense situation. And here we have Russian jet intercepts U.S. spy plane over the Black Sea area. After Kremlin's repeated warnings for the 3rd consecutive day, there's been a Russia and NATO aircraft intercepted over the Black Sea area at the moment where things are just so incredibly tense. And, that is over on one side of the globe. On the other side of the globe, of course, we got everything going on with China. And here you see China vows to open fire on U.S. troops that come to Taiwan's aid. And if you guys are history buffs and you look back to the Korean War, when China got involved and they started to just send in wave after wave after wave after wave of troops, it was just like an overwhelming thing. And that's what actually got the truce, because the war never ended, but it did force the truce, because it was going to be such a tidal wave, a tsunami of soldiers, that it apparently changed the mind. But then again, as we know, history is very much like scripture.
Yeah.
And by the way, U.S. wins an appeal to extradite Assange. Mm-hmm. Yes, there's so much going on at this critical timeline in history right now. And we've had just way too many people that are exceptional athletes that are just leaving us like that. So a family member tells the Associated Press that former Broncos receiver Demaryius Thomas, who they found dead in his home, she believed he died from a seizure. So interesting, there's been so many athletes just leaving us all of a sudden. And just other people as well, in age groups that you wouldn't really expect it. And in California, some people are going to be taught perhaps separately.
Oh.
So we have a different type of segregation going on over there. As the big question, who is and who isn't, but that big question upon the land. Well, yeah, it's this side of the classroom or that side, depending on if it's yay or nay.
Well, yeah, I mean, in so many ways, it's just another form of separation. And what's so sad is that they got both sides scared of each other. And it's just unfortunate.
Well, absolutely. And, many will just say, hey, take this opportunity. We're going to homeschool.
Yeah, absolutely. My daughter, let me give her a shout out. Good girl. She's homeschooling twins.
Yes.
She's awesome. She rocks.
Yeah, and she works. She's going to be homeschooling the kids too.
Yes.
And some help from grandma.
Yep, absolutely. Help from other family members. And this is a time of energy separation, but we can take this opportunity to bring energies together too. It's beautiful.
And every state's radically different from the other. And this is, to me, it's leading to what's an inevitable, obvious breakup. Because you have some states like here in New York, they're going back to a certain date for men. It's going to be in effect December 13th. Other states, you wouldn't even know that there's anything happening because everybody is as if it was, partying as if it was, should we say 2018? Instead of, remember, Prince's, we're going to party like it's 1999. Yep. Well, let's party like it's 2018, guys.
let's do this.
Do it.
We can do this.
Yes. Pre-plague upon the land party.
Yeah, I like that.
There you go.
PPP.
You're going to have it at Rosemary's Place, or if you're in Australia, everybody head to Rosemary's.
Let's go to Rosemary's. Meet you there.
We'll head to Dave in UK's flat. There you go.
Dave has a lot of food too.
Oh, yeah. He could probably feed half the UK.
He could.
Out of his apartment.
Good job, Dave.
And, I'm not going to actually say this headline. I just wanted to share. It's from the Jerusalem Post. And, again, there's been so many worries about every new variation that comes out. And, I think people are becoming more observant of certain things, more observant that, again, as much as they try to tell us that 2 + 2 = 5,
right?
It doesn't. It doesn't. As much as you want to, pound that square peg into that round hole.
Well, they know they'll get some people. So to them, it's worth it. It's worth it.
Well, unfortunately, there's some people that wouldn't be able to give an answer to 2 + 2. What does that equal without the use of a computer?
Right.
Can you imagine having to do math without any sort of computational device?
No.
Just using your mind?
Well, I know there's people that can, but they've also limited that, as well as our ability to spell. It's like everything has an emoji to it now. Let's forget about spelling it out.
Like if we said, okay, what's the answer of 25 times 25? How many people could answer that in like under 5 seconds?
Like, I don't know.
I'm curious. There are some. Definitely.
There are those beautiful minds out there.
And again, that's part of the visualization process, seeing things, which is a key skill for many, many different things, really, in life. So the Southern California container ship backlog is moving farther and farther out to sea. Authorities say strong winds from rough seas have forced them to keep ships farther apart and away from the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. And, you know, I looked at this picture and it just looks so ominous to me. I don't understand why does this feel so ominous? You know, I mean, we've talked about different possibilities as to what is, you know, out there. And interesting, too. I mean, if maybe, you know, think about it, you know, pushing them farther out to sea, maybe there's a certain range, an effective range that certain things have that maybe we'll be pushing those out past that effective range. Yeah. You know, we need people to wake up to the bigger thing that's going on. This, as we've termed it, this massive Trojan horse event that is well underway. And we are in the thick of. Inflation surged 6.8% in November, even more than expected. Fastest rate since 1982. Where were you in 82? Those that were alive. Yeah, I was in my junior year.
Gosh, I think I was like in third grade, fourth grade.
Yeah, it was a great year. 82 was awesome. You know, I mean, gotta love that 80s music.
No, I did get a good taste because my brother got me addicted to the 80s music and 90s. Yep.
Surging prices for food, energy, and shelter have accounted for much of the gains. But I gotta tell you, I got pineapples for $1.46. That stunned me. Whole pineapples for $1.46. Some things haven't really increased, and I don't know why that is. You know, in some places, other things have increased. I've noticed some things just out of stock and they never get replenished. You know, certain brands, especially, it seems like the smaller niche stuff is going. You know, it's kind of like if you go to the store and all you have, if you go get some tomatoes or something in cans, and there's just the generic brands, and there's like nothing else.
Right.
You know, that type of thing, and less organic. But I am actually seeing, I think, a little bit more organic in as far as the vegetables. Now, if they truly are organic, that's another question.
Yeah, I know.
Is there anything organic on the planet?
They're labeled organic. Yeah. Maybe that's just to get them to sell.
When you got those crazy clouds in the sky, you know, is it possible for anything to be organic?
It's sad. Everything needs to be washed really good anyway.
And talking about, you know, a revisionist history, you see, and just like that, inflation's about to disappear. Again, it's how they define things. If they change the way that they define stuff, all of a sudden, I mean, this goes back to that first thing we were looking at, right? If you change your definition of something out of the blue, you know, then all of a sudden, how...
It doesn't change the thing just because you change the word.
No, but it changes the mindset too.
The perception.
This goes back to this.
Yep.
This goes back to this. Now, can we see how clear it really is? Everything that's going on here, you know, when we're talking about perceptions, and they change the way they, you know, it's just frustrating to, you know, they change the rules as we're in the middle of things.
Yeah, they rearrange the stuff on the plate, but it's still all there.
Well, what it is it's a sales job. That's it. It's a pure sales job all the time. And I think people are catching on to that, you know, because again, what have we seen since the Plague Upon the Land came out? Is we've seen the most massive consolidation of wealth in the hands of the ultra elite that we've ever seen. And when we see stuff like this, 46 has a plan to combat corruption, which includes new real estate rules. Oh, but does that apply to, you know, certain corporate entities that are gobbling up real estate so fast that, you know, nobody else has a chance to even buy a house?
Right. Well, who is this going to benefit? That's where you got to look. Follow the money. Follow the money.
Well, again, you know, it's going to be like, we're protecting you.
Yeah, of course.
In reality, they're protecting the ones that they work for.
Yep.
And, you know, they're going to look for corruption. But yet, what about, you know, BlackRock? What about some of these other big corporate giants that are absolutely gobbling up everything on the profits of what has occurred during the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
They're using the profits of that to buy up everything and to control everything. You know, you might want to save seeds, right? We've talked about saving seeds, and we did save some seeds, and we planted some seeds that were quote unquote from an organic watermelon. And what happened? We had big plants, but they didn't give any fruit.
We just had a lot of vine. That's all we got. Just vine and vine. And they've even flowered, but nothing.
They flowered, but there's no fruit.
There was nothing, yeah.
What type of company what type of organization, what type of culture would try to take the fruit away from plants so people can't utilize them, can't plant seeds? Because in reality, if you grow yourself, a few good, say like, squash, zucchini, things like that, they're so productive, you're never going to use all the ones that you're going to get off of it.
Yeah.
So this again is all about controlling profits and controlling the food source. At some point in time, we had said before, a lot of the stuff coming off the container ships is going to places that you might not realize yet, but are being set up for that time when, in order to go get some food for your family, you're going to have to meet certain obligations, period. And if you don't meet those obligations, don't meet those things that they've set out there, you're not going to be able to get food for your family.
Yeah,
unless you're growing it.
Yeah, unless you can grow it.
But if they end up making it, now we know there's farmers that are paid not to produce. Happens all the time. There's tons of food that rots in silos, just ends up being food for rats and mice, while there are people starving all around the globe. This shows the absolute corruption of a system that is dying to be put 6 feet under.
Yeah, and those ones that are creating this corruption are saying, oh, we're going to guard against the corruption. Of course, it's like putting the wolf in charge of the hen house.
Well, the reality is the system is putting many of us 6 feet under.
True.
That's the reality of this. And so when we see this and they're talking about, a whole of government approach to fight against corruption. Oh, does that mean they're all going to step down? That would work.
It would, and I'm feeling a prayer coming on soon. And we're going to do like a prayer or a mantra to help assist these beings in stepping down.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. And I've been thinking about doing that, and just saying to whoever you guys are comfortable with, if you are, comfortable, it seems like most people are comfortable with archangels,
Yeah.
And Yeshua, but whoever you are comfortable with, just ask that the light be shown so that there's no way the darkness can hide their dark doings.
Please.
And let's see this corrupt system just crumble about us as people wake up and no longer go along with it. They're so used to rubber stamps, whatever they want to put through. Okay, yeah. What? It's 1,900 pages? What? We have 2 hours to read 1,900 pages? And then you get your legislatures just to go saying, okay, we'll go along with it. Hey, what's the left doing? What's the right doing? Well, I guess I'm on the left, or yes, I guess I'm on the right. I'll just go along with it, whatever MP says, or I'll go along with whatever, Mitch McConnell says, or any of this. And, it's a system that's got to go. It's got to go.
Yeah, it's got to go. They just rubber stamp whatever. And
I wouldn't want to even corrupt the trash heap by putting it in there.
Please, no, let's not.
Yeah, it's beyond saving.
Mm-hmm.
And we have an insane 85 degrees Celsius, 153 degree Fahrenheit, second largest temperature contrast ever measured in Russia on December 8th. And, this just shows you the extremes that we have. And of course, Russia is a massive country. It's the biggest country land-wise on the globe. And the extremes are getting more extreme. Doesn't mean it's completely natural, though.
Right.
It just means that maybe the agendas are getting more extreme. And when we look at the rewriting of history and how things just don't seem to fit. So this is out of Evolution News and Science today. More Cambrian woes for evolution because They're just looking at what the science is telling them, and again, we have to constantly rewrite. And, it's like, when do people catch on that this revisionist history, it points to the fact that history is either, well, it's being told to us as told and sold to us as kind of a irrefutable science. How do you are you going to dare to refute science?
Right.
Well,
And they're doing that right now. Are you going to go against science by saying all these things don't exist? They're doing it in our face now.
yes, this is how things are. They're going to give it to us. This is how things are. And then a year later, they're going to change it.
Yeah. And imagine all those science tests and all those school tests that people failed when they were wrong to begin with.
And so this is, talking about the argument again of intelligent design, or is there evolution? As if there can only be one or the other. And because our concept of evolution is clouded by Darwin, we end up throwing out the baby with the bathwater, because there can be both. Evolution is a process that is incorporated into the intelligent design of whatever you want to call it. The multiverse, the whatever, the next term will be. And when we see this, Denisovans or Homo sapiens, who were the first to settle permanently on the Tibetan plateau? Well, we've been finding some Denisovan DNA lately, and well intact, to give us clues. And the Denisovans apparently were there first because their DNA was adapted, their genes were adapted for the higher altitude living. Now, I lived at close to 8,000 feet, and my body didn't like it. I mean, if I was just doing normal things, it was fine. But when we really pushed and we went hiking, I wasn't crazy about it. So I don't think I have that gene. But this is all very interesting. Now, when we're talking about Denisovans too, what we got was they were not less evolved than us. In reality, again, the soul uses the body as a vehicle. Well, the Denisovans actually had a superior vehicle than we do now. And what's planned, that's going to come out of everything that you see going on right now, is going to be a vehicle that's going to be less useful for the soul, more useful for the system. And this has been the trend and the tendency, because Denisovans and Cro-Magnon man and Neanderthal and some others, bigger, stronger, bigger brain capacity, more in tune with the land, more in tune with their instincts and Mother Nature, and thus less able to be controlled by a system. And this is why they're no longer here. We do have some of their genes, some of us do. And so they speak of Denisovans as archaic hominins, once dispersed throughout Asia. After several instances of interbreeding with early modern humans in the region, one of their hybridizations benefited Tibetan survival and settlement at high altitudes. And when you get to the big time frame too, like, well, when did they, when was the last one here? Now they're talking about maybe as early as 16 to 20,000 years ago, they were still here. I wonder if we could stretch that out to Younger Dryas, about 12,700 years ago, with that big extinction event, which, as we've talked about before, very well may be tied into the, those of the Anunnaki and the Gigi. Uh-oh.
Yep. Uh-oh.
Yeah, those guys again. And we're talking about Darwin. Charles Darwin was a Freemason, and so was his great-grandfather too, Erasmus Darwin. And when you think about this, these families exert so much influence on everything. There's so few families that really exert so much influence on the way everything is conceptualized in our world. So when you hear the surname Darwin, Charles Darwin, as theory of evolution, often are the only things that come to mind. However, his grandfather, Erasmus Darwin, is a fascinating man, also a Freemason too. He was born on December 12, 1731 to Robert Darwin and Elizabeth Hill in England. His father, a prominent lawyer and physician, and he is named after his ancestor Erasmus Earl, who was common sergeant of law under Oliver Cromwell, who was another infamous person there. After primary school, he attended St. John's College and University of Edinburgh Medical School. His work in the medical field was unmatched at the time, so much so that he was offered and declined to be court physician for King George III. So you see how these things tie in. And he actually formed the Lunar Society. Was a society, it was a social group of learned men who got together, discussed different ideas on full moons. Maybe they're just, picking up the phone back in those days and dialing up the Draco. Hey guys, what do you want us to do next?
I know. How do you want us to steer this ship, boss?
How do we steer this ship? Oh, by the way, according to my calculations, it's supposed to be a full moon in 16 months and 3 days. You might want to adjust the angle a little bit of the ship, Okay, there you go.
Yep.
It's just, the secret societies tied in with those that give us all our dogma, whether it's, religious. I mean, we could go again, so many people that profess a belief in the Bible as being, literal translation of God's will to men. And then they don't realize that their King James Bible, which is the favorite of many, not all, but many, King James was also a Freemason. In fact, in charge of all the Masonic lodges in Scotland and England in his day. The insider's cider. Insider's insider. Maybe they had too much cider. I don't know what they were spiking that cider with, or maybe a little bit too much mead or grog or whatever it was.
Exactly.
As we know, they often had strange things that they did at these, secret society parties.
Plenty of moonshine.
A lot of that's coming out right now in the modern day, for sure.
It is.
But you think about it, here they are forming the way we view things. So when we think of evolution, we think of Darwinian evolution, not that there couldn't be anything different. Not that there couldn't be an evolutionary process, but it wasn't correctly described by Darwin. And we think in terms of survival of the fittest. Well, if that's the case, then how about a body, which is a combination of all these different cells? The cells aren't really, in competition with each other. It's not like the heart finally beat the kidneys, or the liver finally beat the lungs, and now, they're in charge of everything. No, everything works together as a system in a symbiotic way. That's how nature works. It's supposed to be symbiosis and not survival of the fittest. So again, that survival of the fittest, well, that really feels like a draconian term. We were talking about the definition of draconian.
Mm-hmm.
What really is the definition of draconian? Well, it comes out of this system.
Right, it sure does.
Yeah, so again, secret societies, intrusion into every aspect of our life, informing, our very, very, the concepts from which we might not even realize that we're using, that create the lens with which we see all of reality.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting stuff. So we want to thank everybody for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon, as usual. We most definitely couldn't do it without you guys. And also, we did want to encourage people to check out Evolutionary Energy Arts if it will come up, as they like to interfere in these times. There you go. And learn more about us. Anybody that needs to set up an appointment, it's evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com or EEARTS@protonmail.com. Whether you want a Vedic chart or energy work or just spiritual coaching, connecting to your spirit guides, helping the ascension process, and or all of the above.
Right.
As always, guys, stay prepared out there. Keep sending your positive intentions out. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.